Hey everybody, welcome back to Fed News, the October through November edition. Let's get started. So Mike Graham is in talks with UWA Developmental. If you know who Mike Graham was, he was an FCW or CWF wrestler. I think I'm getting Florida Championship Wrestling. Um, he was, kind of big back. Well, I wouldn't say big, but he was territorially big in the 80s. Eddie Graham, I think, was his father. So that's who that is. So hopefully that works out. Taz is signed with UWA Developmental, and here's a picture of what Taz looks like. He's actually on his way here now. So let's get started. Wick Win kicks off with Taz defeating Tatanka by pinfall. Power and Glory defeats Chronic and Adam Cole and and Fish. So it's a triple threat six-man tag match. Power and Glory win that match. King Kong Bundy defeats Raven to become the new Hardcore Champion. Over to Nitro now, Roderick Strong defeats the Hurricane. Crash Holly defeats Juventud Guerrera. Alex Wright versus Calarelli ends in a time limit draw. Lance Cade defeats Don Morocco by pinfall. And Cassius Ono defeats Mike Kanellis by pinfall. Over to SmackDown now as Hart Dynasty and Rick Rude defeats Simon Dean, Carl Anderson, and Reggie by pinfall. The Dudley Boys defeat the Singh Brothers by pinfall. And Norman Smiley becomes a new Hardcore Champion, defeating Kevin Sullivan. Raw now has Brian Knobbs defeating A-Train. LOD defeats Larry Sabisco and Jake Gemini. Simon Diamond defeated Bob Backlund in an upset. Brian Pillman and Shinsuke Nakamura defeated Sylvan and Jerry Lynn by pinfall. And the main event sees Cesaro defeat Jey Uso, Owen Hart by pinfall. So the WCW Sin card looks like Zeus versus Randy Orton, Kurt Angle versus Sting for the TV title, Motor City Machine Guns versus Doug Furnas and Phil LaFron, Andre the Giant versus Hardcore Holly, the Highlanders take on Harlem Heat for the tag belts, and Rhino versus Bam Bam Bigelow, with the main event being the Big Show versus the Macho Man Randy Savage for the UCW World Heavyweight title. Thunder now has Test defeated King Kong Bundy to become two-time Hardcore Champion. Ken Shamrock defeated Moose by submission. Rey Mysterio defeats Adam Cole to retain his Cruiserweight title. In the main event sees Power and Glory defeat Rock and Roll Express to win the USA Tag Team titles. The UCW USA Tag Team titles, that is. Over to Sin now, it's Randy Orton defeats Zeus in the opener. Hardcore Holly retains over Andre the Giant by countout. Doug Furnas and Phil LaFron defeat Motor City Machine Guns by pinfall. Kurt Angle defeats Sting by pinfall for become the new TV champion. Rhino defeats Bam Bam Bigelow by pinfall. The Highlanders defeat Harlem Heat to become the new tag team champions. And the Big Show defeats Macho Man Randy Savage by pinfall. Now, after the match, Randy Savage did basically enact his rematch clause, because even though he had not defended the title, because he won Warfare, he did get that opportunity to challenge for the world title whenever he chooses. And since the next pay-per-view will be Starrcade, he figures why not go for the main event of the UCW brand. So the Starrcade main event will be the Big Show versus Macho Man Randy Savage in a rematch. Week 2 kicks off with Trevor Murdoch defeating Muhammad Ali. Chronic defeats Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. The main event sees Test retain his Hardcore title over Ken Shamrock. Over to Nitro, Andre the Giant defeats Cassius Ono. Harlem Heat and Zeus defeat Motor Machine Guns and Juventud Guerrera by pinfall. King Kong Bundy defeats the Hurricane by pinfall. And Doug Furnas and Phil LaFron continue by defeating Rock and Roll Express. Rock and Roll Express now has, of course, enough points to move up to the main roster. And Rhino defeats Sting, Roderick Strong, and Randy Orton by pinfall. Over to SmackDown, Big Boss Man defeats Reggie by pinfall. The Dudleys defeat the Hart Dynasty by pinfall. The main event sees Norman Smiley defeat Bull Buchanan to retain his Hardcore title. Over to Raw, Roddy Piper defeats Simon Diamond by submission. Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel defeat Spike Dudley and Randy Rose by pinfall. Brian Knobbs defeats Titus O'Neil by pinfall. Owen Hart defeats Marty Jannetty by submission. And Chris Candido defeats Johnny Gargano to become the new international champion. Over to week 3 now is the Moose defeats Austin Theory by pinfall. Adam Cole defeats Raven by pinfall. And Paul Orndorff defeats Test to become the new Hardcore champion. Over to Nitro as Crash Holly defeats Don Morocco. Alex Wright defeats Bam Bam Bigelow. Sting defeats Mike Kanellis. Randy Orton defeats Roderick Strong. And Kurt Angle and King Kong Bundy ends in a double countout. Over to SmackDown, though, as Carl Anderson defeats Rick Rude and Ezekiel Jackson by pinfall. New Age Outlaws versus the Singh Brothers ends in a time limit draw. And Big Boss Man defeats Norman Smiley to become the new Hardcore champion. Over to Raw, Jey Uso defeats A-Train. Spike Dudley vs. Randy Rose ends in a time limit draw. Jerry Lynn defeats Shinsuke Nakamura by pinfall. Brian Knobbs defeats Brian Pillman by pinfall. And the main event sees Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel defeat LOD by pinfall. Over to Thunder now as Moose defeats Trevor Murdoch by pinfall. Undisputed Era defeats Eric Young, Tatanka, and Raven by pinfall. And the main event sees Paul Orndorff defeat Test by pinfall. Nitro Now's Motor City Machine Guns defeat Mike Kanellis and Humberto Guerrera. The Hurricane defeats Lance Cade. Andre the Giant defeats Alex Wright. Harlem Heat defeats Rock and Roll Express. And the main event sees Bam Bam Bigelow defeats Sting by pinfall. Over to SmackDown now as Rick Rude defeats Giant Gonzalez, Ezekiel Jackson, and Psychosis by pinfall. The New Age Outlaws defeat the Singh Brothers by pinfall. And the main event sees Big Boss Man retain his title over Norman Smiley. Over to Raw now as Sylvan defeats Johnny Gargano by pinfall. Bab Backlund defeats Jake Gemini by pinfall. Jey Uso defeats Larry Zbyszko by pinfall. Brian Knobbs and Brian Pillman end in a double countout. And the main event sees Jerry Lynn become the new UWF International Champion by beating Chris Candido. And that brings us to the Survivor Series card of the UWF. 8-man tag match. Jerry Lynn versus Sylvan for the international title. Brian Knobbs versus Brian Pillman. Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel versus Barn Breaker and The Fiend for the tag titles. Survivor Series 8-man elimination match. And Cesaro versus Winman for the IC title. The main event sees Yokozuna take on Cody Rhodes for the world title. Over to SmackDown as Reggie defeats Psychosis by pinfall. Ezekiel Jackson, the Singh Brothers, Simon Dean, that is, and Giant Gonzalez defeated the Hart Dynasty, Kim Sullivan, Carl Anderson, and Buchanan by pinfall. Big Boss Man defeats Rick Rude by pinfall to retain his hardcore title. And the main event says the Dudleys defeat the New Age Outlaws to become two-time UWF USA Tag Team Champions. Over to Survivor Series is Randy Rose, Titus O'Neil, Jey Uso, and Bob Backlund defeat Larry Zbyszko, A-Train, Simon Diamond, and Jake Gemini by pinfall. Sylvan becomes the new international champion defeating Jerry Lynn, his first time holding that title. Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel defeat Braun Breaker and The Fiend to become the new tag team champions. Brian Knobbs defeats Brian Pillman by pinfall. William Regal defeats Cesaro by pinfall, retaining his Intercontinental title. And Owen Hart, Spike Dudley, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Chris Candido defeated Gargano, LOD, and Roddy Piper by pinfall to become the Survivor team winning. And Cody Rhodes defeats Yokozuna to retain his title. Batista, of course, still out with injury for another 2 months. I do believe, or longer. So here are UWF champions: Cody Rhodes, William Regal, Sylvan becoming the international champion, Bossman becoming I wouldn't say the best hardcore champion, but definitely defending that belt, and the Dudleys 2-time champions as well. Over to UCW, though, as Big Show is now your new world champion. Hardcore Holly still the U.S. champion. The Highlanders, of course, are now your new tag champions. Kurt Angle is now the TV champion. Ray is still the cruiserweight. Paul Orndorff is the current hardcore, and Power and Glory, Paul Roman Hercules, are your UCW United States Tag Team Champions. That's all for this week. Check back next week as we head towards Starrcade and Armageddon.